What up, y'all? This is K Murdoch. I'm here with my co-host, head of Proxima Studios, Harvey Newman, and we are For the Players. This is the For the Players podcast. We are back again, 2 in a row. Hopefully, we keep chaining and stacking. It has been a long time since we've done. Yeah, I know. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Consistent shows, but we're back. And lots to talk about. I mean, if you listen to hopefully our last show where we kind of caught you up about what we're doing individually and as a studio. But this episode, we're kind of going to focus on some of the other things that are happening. We started touching on it towards the end of last episode. And I mentioned like the fallout from, Assassin's Creed Shadows trailer being leaked or the game being talked about. But there's so many other things that happened over the course of and are still happening in the gaming world, from studio closures to the new E3, as people are saying, through Summer Game Fest, which just happened in LA, where I am. We can talk about that. But first off, let me start off. How you doing, man? I didn't even get into
man.
The pleasantries, you know?
Absolutely. No, doing good, doing really good. Getting back into the swing of things.
Your studio's kind of coming together. I feel like every week we're going to see a little bit more progress being made as far as organization and getting settled.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna have to pick up pace again, right? And but yeah, like I needed to actually. I don't think I mentioned it last time, but I moved home, and
Yes.
and yeah, like as you guys can see if you are watching this on YouTube right now,
Right.
like the office is completely empty. So I used to have like album artwork behind me and like game stuff and Barack Obama and Walt Disney and
Right.
inspiration that I like to have around me.
You just
But
haven't gotten to that yet. You are going to put those back up. You just haven't. Okay.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I need that inspiration back because working on a white room like this, I find it super depressing. And just come in and I'm like,
it lacks flavor,
lacks flavor, exactly.
Yeah.
So but the family's settling in, and yeah, man, I've been keeping up with all this news in the industry, in the games industry, and the good thing about this podcast is that is an outlet for us to have a moment to kind of like digest and kind of like think through to these changes in the industry, because there's a lot of them and they're coming in really fast.
Right.
So let's do it in this episode.
Well, man, where do we start? Do you want to start? I feel like it's like the good news and the bad news. I mean, obviously the good news being that people were kind of really sad a couple years ago when E3 just went out, stopped. But the good news is that Summer Game Fest was here, and this was the first year they did it here in LA, where I'm based. And ironically, I was supposed to go. Shout out to the homie. I feel like I mention him every show, and eventually we'll have him on. My good friend, my music partner in crime, or in rhyme, I guess is the better way to say it. Megaran got me on the list to go see a lot of these games, but unfortunately, a bout with COVID had me not going, which was fortunately the smart thing to do. I didn't want to go and turn Super Game Fest into a spreader.
And he all started with Kyle.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to be that guy. But I did catch the trailers, so we can start with the good news, and the bad news, I guess, is we were mentioning offline, talking about all the studio closures and the massive layoffs that have been plaguing this industry and really just the media industry, because coming from more film and podcasts and stuff like that networks, big media companies have been shuttering and quitting and firing people, or I shouldn't say fire. Well, yeah, they've been firing and letting people go the last year. I myself, unfortunately, was a victim of that, but thankfully I've been able to rebound and I freelance for a living now. But I don't know. What should we start bad and go to good to go to bad? I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I think let's start with the bad and finish with the good, just to kind of like make sure that people have something to look forward to.
Right? They're like, yo, these dudes are depressing, man.
This is a depressing podcast.
Right.
Yeah, let's start with that. I think maybe like we can start like in a reverse chronological order. Maybe
that
start
makes sense.
With the Game Awards and then talk about Assassin's Creed.
Okay. Well, okay. So let's dig into it. And with the studio closures, you've been in this industry for, again, a lot long, like almost 2 decades at this point, right? Yeah. So, and we talked like in meetings, like offline privately about like what you think is the reason why this is happening. But so
Yeah.
I'm just like, as someone who's been there and kind of seen this ebb and flow,
Yeah.
what do you think is the issue? Why are so many, especially studios that had like put out IPs that did really well, are being
Yeah.
closed?
Oh man, yeah. I think everybody in the industry right now is trying to get to grips with what's going on, because it's the first time that I've seen this. Like I remember, like, end of 2000s, there was like a little bit of, like, a squeeze for double A games, but now it's nothing like this. I feel like the things are changing, and like there's a bunch of different reasons really why things are actually at this state. I think the way I like to see it, at least, and I like to break it down, is that I think there's the gamers and then there's the investors. There's the two different separated, like black and white kind of situation when it comes to the industry. And unfortunately, and we always felt that in the industry anyways, at least I did, that like the investors and the publishers and the people like perhaps that are at the top of the top of the top, they don't really get what gamers want. They just after obviously profit because they have to fulfill, the interests of shareholders and stuff, which makes complete sense. That's is a business after all. But the problem is that I think we've been a little bit overzealous when it comes to money. Like the games industry has been like the most profitable media industry in the world, more than film, more than books, more than whatever. When a GTA drops, it's
Oh
like
my
a
God.
bomb, right? Like the
Yes.
amount of money they make, the amount of money that
It's
profits,
like a
and
Star Wars movie or something
yeah,
like, yeah.
exactly. And then everybody profits, right? Sans Row
Yep.
comes out, and then that makes money, things like that. So I think there's been a lot of that going on, and I think people fully thought that this was going to be forever, and unfortunately, it isn't. And there's a finite number of things that you can do in order to make money. And lately, it's been all about the multiplayer industry. It's been all about, like, how can we actually kind of like retain people buying assets in games, the clothes and the emotes and
The
all this stuff,
microtransactions and right.
microtransactions, right?
Yes.
And all these things. And we've seen like peaks of this almost like bursting. Like when I was working in Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2, there was a big like fiasco, they called it, because they actually went pay to win. Well, almost. You kind of felt that way, and it felt like you could actually pay to actually get the better weapons and the better heroes and things like that.
Right.
And it was like like it was in the news. Whole countries canceled the game from getting into that. It's a whole story for another day. So it was a massive thing that happened at that point, and it was very much like people being greedy. So let's drag it back and just
Right.
make a good game, which we eventually did. So, but then they kind of settles down, and then people can continue to make money. But I do think that at this point in time, we are at the point where gamers are fatigued of multiplayer games. I think there's too many of them, and there's only so many attention you can have. But then there's also the investors where they are looking for ways to make money, right? To continue growing their companies, their investments and stuff like that. And there's nothing better than multiplayer because it's a live game and can go on forever. So it's very much like lots of effort, but once the game is out, then it's little effort, right? And while a single player game is very much like lots of effort, it comes out, it has a lifespan, and then no more profit. Now goes to the next game, single player game. So there's less opportunities for profit there. So I think that gamers want something, which is I feel like we're turning the tide towards single player, and then investors want to keep on the multiplayer trend. But I don't think those two things are one at the moment, and I think we're going to fall somewhere in between. But because of this, there's a lot of projects. Projects normally take 3 to 5 years to make, which is another complaint that a lot of gamers have nowadays. It's taking too long to make games. But because the games take 3 to 5 years, if you kind of like count back from 2024 backwards, the games that were started in 2019, 2020, they are being canceled now because now the appetite of the industry changed and shifted completely.
Wow.
Right. So now, obviously, a studio that was doing so well because, the Justice League game that came out just on
Right.
like not long ago, that's a good example, right? 7 years in the making, right? When they were making it initially, that type of game was everything that players wanted.
Right.
So they made the game because obviously this is going to be like this forever. 7 years later, gamers don't want that anymore. So now there's no appetite for this game. The game flops. It's horrible. What has happened, right?
Man, it's in the process of you talking about what you just did, and it made me think about the idea of DLC, downloadable content, and when that started. And I'm curious, especially as someone who's worked in the industry, do you think when DLC became a thing, and I mean it's been around now, I mean it's just commonplace. Everyone knows like games have DLC or expansions or season passes and stuff. When it started though, was it really a situation to bridge, like keep people playing an IP in the sense of like there was stuff that we didn't get to finish in the story that we knew we could do later in DLC? Or was it for the idea of publishers seeing this is another way to keep people playing and paying money? Or is it a little bit of both, or do you think it's more balanced or like swings towards like we really wanted to continue the story or we wanted profits?
That's a good question. I think it started as something that was beneficial and amazing for players. And then it became profits. I think that's how it started, right? So it was kind of both things. And somewhere in the middle, both things were true and also they were great, right?
Right. And they can be true. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. Right?
Absolutely. Right. Like, you know, for example, nowadays, like when most publishers announce their deluxe edition with a statue, right? Like see
like
how
the $130 version. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So that laughter that you just had is basically, I feel how most players feel when most publishers announce these things. They still sell,
right?
But most players go, hold on a second, I'm going to buy the game when it comes out, see how good it is, and then I might actually get
as opposed to paying outright, and the game sucked. Yeah,
the pre-order, right? There's always the pre-order thing, and I think it's the same thing with the DLC, right? Because if I remember well, I think like one of the first games that did it was like I think it was either Halo or was Battlefield or Call of Duty. It was one of those, I think. I do remember doing it myself on Battlefield and Battlefront, and when the games were not so much this just one disc put in your console and then go away. When the internet started coming in, then all of a sudden there was certain things such as the 0-day patch. Have you ever heard about this?
Yes, yeah. When stuff is not, Cyberpunk is known for having had to have one.
Exactly, yeah. As soon as you put the disc in, even though you think you're just going to play it, be like, that's an update. So that's the 0-day patch, right? Like you don't even get to play the game. You just have to download an update before you get to play the game. And then a few days later, there's normally another update. And the reason why you do that is because of like, you know, you're still developing the game and you're trying to squeeze as much as possible from the game, which is great. But, you know, some of it after the discs get printed doesn't get into the disc, right? So you have to get players to download it after the fact. So I think that's how things started. And then he basically became, what if we actually made for a few months, like a DLC that goes on top of the game? So now you have the game, but now you have a bolt-on on top. But then they started charging for those things because now the DLC is so big. Let's say 6 months go past and you worked on the game and it's like a massive DLC, new weapons, new maps, new things, new vehicles. Then all of a sudden it's like, there's so much content here. We need to charge for it, but players are having so much fun. Let's get them the money, right?
Right.
So that kind of works really well. The problem is when the plan is not really well put together. There's false promises that people will go like, here's our plan for the next 3 years. And they promise a bunch of stuff, yet a year after they cancel the game. So players have been like committed to this game for supposedly 3 years plus, but they haven't really got their money's worth because a year in the game closes and there's no more game. So it becomes like players become fatigued because then it's basically a repeating cycle. And when enough times go past and these things keep happening, then players just go like, you're not going to fool me more than a few more times. You're going to fool me a few times, but then after that is fine. And I think this is how we are here. So, and multiplayer is just an extension of the DLC. I think it's the same thing. It's just more immediate, right?
Is the trend usually like when a game, and we've talked offline about this, because you've worked on like games that have been canceled and like almost at the finish line, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how that feels and whatnot. Yeah. And you obviously, if you want to share more, what you can share, that's cool. But I'm curious, like when a game gets canceled, does that also mean like the studio a lot of times that was working on it, like they get shut down and shuttered too? Like how does that usually happen? Or does that
Oh,
studio just get moved to another project a lot of times, or does it just differ?
not necessarily. It depends. It really depends. So, like, a piece of information that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to game studios is that the people within the game studios have value. For as much as we say all the time, especially in development, that we don't get paid as much as we should because we end up making the money. Yet, people up top get all the money and things like that.
Right.
But the people within the studio do have value, right? They worth something. So there's a bunch of different variables that can happen. So the first one in the most extreme is definitely like the game gets canceled and the studio gets shut down, right? And especially it's a massive surprise when the studio has a lot of pedigree. So recently it has happened to Tango Gameworks, unfortunately, and they did Hi-Fi Rush, amazing game, lots of awards,
Right.
super, super cool. Like you could never think that a game that made that much money for Microsoft would be shut down. Yet they shut down the studio and then they fired everybody as well, as far as I know. Now, these people that are in the studio, they can actually like get new jobs because they experience, especially if they work in a big IP like that. Like as soon as you
And a
mention the name,
successful one too. Right.
exactly. Like we want your stuff, we want your knowledge, which is great.
Right.
The second option here is that the project gets canceled, but the studio doesn't get shut down; it gets fragmented. So even though the studio, if it's somebody like, I'm not saying this happens, I don't know, I'm just assuming, but if somebody like Microsoft that has multiple studios or Sony has multiple studios, instead of actually like closing the whole studio, what they do is actually they basically give people jobs if they wanted in other studios around the same organization, right? Because once again, talent matters, right? So we don't want to lose the talent that we have. We want to use it on other studios if we can before you leave to another place.
Right.
And then the last thing that happens is that the game gets shut down and they actually get to work or co-dev into other studios. So for the time that they're trying to sort out what they're going to work on next, so the studio's still up, just the game got shut down. They need to be like, okay, do another proposal, just like we're doing right now at Proxima. Like proposal of the next game they want to do. They have to go probably to the same things that we have to do. They have to pitch it. They have to make sure that either
start
internally,
the process over. And,
yeah, exactly. And if EA or Microsoft or Sega or Sony likes it, then they can actually go like, cool, here's money. Even though they're internal studio and they're owned by that company, they still need to pitch it. So if they actually get traction, great. Then they can start working on that next project. Another few years, the game comes out. But until that is happening, normally there's lots of people that like animators or artists or designers or whatever, that they don't have a lot to do because there's too many personnel to actually work on a prototype. A prototype, as you know, Kyle, doesn't take a lot of people.
Yeah, I know too well now.
Exactly. So because let's say it's a studio of 100 people and you have to prototype an idea for a game, you just need a handful of people, maybe 20 people.
Right.
So all these are the people that are in the studio, what they're going to do. So they co-dev, they actually help other studios finish a game. So Ubisoft is renowned for this, right? They actually kind of like whenever they get to the end of a project or you're just about to come out, they actually get a bunch of studios to help out to finish the project, and then another Assassin's Creed comes out, and then they go back to their normal games again.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Man, it's so. Yeah, it's been so awesome. I feel like I say this every episode, but seriously, like just pulling back the curtain, because as a longtime person who's played these games, it's definitely occurred to me to think like, man, how is this made? Or like, and now finding out all the intricacies and things that go into it, you really just appreciate it more. But you also like, because as a gamer, it's like, man, like playing like Mario 2, it's like, oh man, I love Mario 2. When is Mario 3 coming out? Thinking it'll come out next year and not realizing it's going to take maybe, like you said, 3 to 5 years. But then I think people also get confused sometimes when they think about game franchises that do come out every year, like Madden, or now it's more than sports. You think about like COD and games like that. Literally, there's a new iteration of it that it kind of is building off the predecessor every year. And I guess just trying to, some people, if you can put it out there and just explain to people, why is that? Why do some franchises take 3 to 5 years to create a sequel, whereas then you have things like Assassin's Creed, which is a huge game, and there seems to be a new Assassin's Creed at least every 2 years at this point. That's the rhythm, it seems. So
yeah, absolutely. I think the answer here is definitely profits. That's basically what it is. As long as people keep buying them, they need to make them, and if they'll
make a big enough team to be able to work.
Exactly. If they making them every year, then they can actually like make it. And I think the sports games were definitely the originators of this idea of like we can make a consistent game every single year and change one thing and then call it FIFA 2024. And then people will buy it, right? So I do think that sports games were actually basically the blueprint to this. You know, the Maddens, the NFL, the NBA 2K and stuff like that.
Right.
But making a sports game and updating it, even though it's everything is a mammoth task, but there's differences towards like what can you change within a certain time in a sports game, and what can you change in a Call of Duty? What can you change in a Call of Duty in order to make it a new game? And I think this is where we kind of like cornered ourselves a little bit, at least from my perspective in the industry, because we keep throwing more and more people at these things in order to make them fast, in order to make them every year. And then when there's not enough people, then the studios, like full studios, and they basically have a cadence of like, this year is a studio, the next year is another studio, the year after is the other studio. So if you have 3 studios working on the same IP
and just rotating,
exactly, you still have 3 years to make the game, but you're releasing it every single year, right? It's just like a cadence.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Exactly, but you have problems with quality because different studios have different ideas and they have different ways of delivering. And this is why when, I don't know, Treyarch releases a version of Call of Duty versus Sledgehammers or whatever it is, like they are slightly different, and then players prefer one or the other. So that's basically how it's done. But it's hard, man. It's really hard. When I was working in Battlefield, the pressure is real because players have expectations and they have really strong opinions, which they should do, but they want certain things fixed. And there's a lot of things that recur, and not everything can be fixed. And fixing these things in a multiplayer, high competitive, like first person shooter is way more complex than doing it in a sports game. It's really complex.
And you were dealing with IP, the Star Wars IP, at one point. So, I mean, like, I can only imagine, like, when you all were, like, even putting out the trailer, like, praying that people would receive this right. You know what I mean? I'm sure you got, like, the wide array of just, like, this looks great, or, like, oh, man, they didn't do this. And
100%. It was the first time that I realized that you cannot please everybody. Because all of us actually had this feeling of like, we did an amazing job.
And then the internet will humble you really quick.
100%. The internet will humble you fast. So I put it out there and we're like, this is all right. Like, I wish they had put this and this other thing in it and stuff. Man. So you're like, okay, so, we can't please everybody. But as long as most people are pleased and they actually can see that you put in work and is faithful to the original IP, it's actually really cool. Like the feeling of it is really nice. In the Star Wars specifically, because we had 2 types of fans. We had gamers and we had Star Wars fans. And you can argue that these are the 2 most hardcore fans you can find in the whole world, for the better or worse, because people are incredibly passionate, which I love. But it can go really good or really bad. There's no in between. Like the people like either love it or they hate it. And then you have to deliver. But thankfully, it went well and people loved it. And we were all Star Wars fans. So as long as people working on the IP really love the IP, it's a win. The problem is when people that are just making it just for the IP's sake, because the IP is known.
And just trying to get the money and...
Yeah, you can see the passion didn't really filter through the game. And then it's basically just like another just regular game, I guess.
Answer me this. I'm curious. Have you ever worked on a project where like you all put something out and fans were like, I wish they had done this, and you all were like, boom, we got to put that in the DLC, and maybe hadn't even thought about something that a fan recommended? Or is it usually just stuff you all have like in the back burner, like we are just saving this for DLC. Wait till they see it. Like, has there ever been a situation where the fans have given you an idea like, yo, we got to do that? Like,
absolutely. Yeah, no. So I always mention this because it was one of the games that humbled me the most, which was which was actually like Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, and I learned so much from that game because we kind of like, it was controversial in the beginning. People kind of signed off because the reviews were not great initially, but the Star Wars fans kind of stayed in. The gamers that loved the game stayed in. So there was lots of Reddit. The community on Reddit became massive. Even to this day, I think the community and the player account for Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, is higher than Battlefield 5, which is a game that came out later. So there's a lot of love for the game, and a lot of, like, we used to pay attention and look very closely to suggestions from the fans about animations and characters and storylines and what would work, what not, and basically try to sometimes get a little bit of, like, not only fix the bugs and make the game better, but also make sure that the game is better to the audience, right? And it was the very first time that I truly understood the power of being close to a community. So there's a studio called Supergiant Games, I believe.
Yes.
The one that did Hades.
Bastion,
exactly. So
Hades,
I commend them. Yeah, I commend them highly because of this thing that they do, which is they do, they open the game early on before the game comes out for free for the community. And then basically they just throw in like different demo beta builds, alpha builds and stuff for people to play. And then the diehard fans come back and be like, I loved it on this build, but at this build, I don't like this and this and the other. And then they go, cool, no problem. If it makes sense and if it's constructive criticism and if it actually feels right, because 9 times out of 10, you have a feeling that something is not right and you know more or less what it is. But the community kind of like saying it just goes like, confirmation, this is definitely not working. So now we go ahead and fix it, put it up again, and then they actually kind of like give you the feedback. So Battlefront was that for us, but just live. Like we had to put it out for the players to play everywhere in the world. And it worked out really well because in the end, both the community had a lot of faith in us, and we were so confident in our skills and listening to the community that we started having fun with it. So this is why, like, people, like we, for example, said for the next DLC, for the next update, we will have BB-8 as a hero, and heroes can fight each other on a specific mode. They can fight each other on the model, and a hero is Darth Vader. A hero is like Luke Skywalker. How can Darth Vader face BB-8 and BB-8,
a little robot, a droid, right?
The amount of backlash we had, it was like, how can you do this? This is horrible. And then we did the same thing with the Ewok. So it's like, how can the Ewok face Darth Vader? This makes sense. And we did it. And then we did it, and you pulled it off. And then they understood and they saw how fun it was to play it as like a little BB-8 spinning around with cables, trying to take on Darth Vader. When you make it, you feel like a boss, right? So people starting to see the benefits of it all. So obviously some people still like it, some people don't like it. You still have controversial kind of like feedback, but overall people loved it, and that kind of showed trust in us. Like, we just basically said, in other words, trust us, this is going to be fun. And then when they had it, we're like, look at BB-8 taking on this guy. It was really good. So yeah, it's nice.
It's kind of like I'm sure when people first got, and I'm going back, but like when GoldenEye came out way back in the day, and people saw Oddjob, and they're like, what is this short dude? And then he wound up being like the cheat code dude, like, because you can never, he was so low, he could easily shoot, and you would miss him because the bullets would go over his head.
The hitbox was messed up. That's why.
That too. But yeah,
but the Oddjob was amazing, especially with the throwing hat and stuff.
Oh my god, yeah. We used to outlaw him like whenever we play in the dorms, because it came out during college for me for the 64, and we used to say no Oddjob, like no Oddjob and no golden guns, like I got that on Tekken. I remember when Eddie Gordo came out, it was like nobody played Eddie Gordo because he was too good. It was like, but at the same time, you want to play it. It was like, he's a black character. He's the only black character.
It's me. I want to play him. So it's like,
Right.
no, you cannot play him. He's too
Right.
good. It's like, he's too good because he's black. What you saying? So
He was just, his style was so unpredictable. His reach, he could literally hit you from every angle, which was
that's it.
awesome.
That's
Yeah.
it, man. It
Yeah.
was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah,
Right.
like I love games like that. But then eventually it gets balanced out with feature releases. But yeah,
Right.
so
Well, just wrapping up the studio closures, you mentioned Tango. Are
mhm.
there any other ones that happened that you were like kind of scratching your head, like, I can't believe, I mean, wow.
Yeah, there was a few. So the thing that like the biggest thing that is basically as a group that actually kind of like stresses me out a little bit. There is two. There is like the Microsoft thing that happened just recently. That Microsoft kind of like closed a bunch of different studios
Right,
and
right,
replaced a
right.
bunch of different
Some of
people.
them, which they had just gotten like a few years ago, like,
Oh my god, it's horrible. So that was the latest one because they had like a really successful showcase. I don't know if you saw. They had like, we're gonna talk about like,
yes,
the game Summer Game Fest, but before then or after that they had the Xbox showcase, and that was really good. They had amazing games to showcase, but how can you justify having so much IP, so many IPs, and actually kind of like having so many things to do? And this is not a complaint per se, but it's just like my thought process. And actually dismiss so many people, especially talented people, right? When somebody releases a game that is like so successful, like Hi-Fi Rush, at least give them a chance to make another one, right? Or to
right,
have a
right,
second version, or see what comes out of that studio next. So yeah, I think that to me was definitely the biggest one, and everything else that they closed around because it's Microsoft. And a few years back, I remember perfectly, especially when I was working in Lionhead, before it was closed, because
right,
that was the first time that I saw a studio that was like not only like with lots of pedigree, but also like they was closed so close to release,
hmm
um, like being shut down for no apparent reason. Yeah,
right,
it hurts as a developer when you internally, because as a gamer, you're shocked, but as a developer, you go like, but wait a second, we are owned by Microsoft. I mean, like there was no signs coming, and then all of a sudden this happens, and things were going so well, right?
right,
So what has happened? And you start kind of like not only personally questioning your career, but you're starting questioning like where the games industry is heading and stuff. And this was way back in the day when the only studio that was closed at that point was Lionhead. But it's just that the Lionhead was doing Fable for so long that you would
right,
never think with an IP of that caliber that they would actually close it. So
right, right,
nowadays, when it happens so often, that idea of like questioning the industry becomes even bigger, right? Because I was like, is this going to stop ever? Is this going to be the future of the industry?
right,
The games industry used to be stable. It used to be like if you join somebody like Microsoft, then you stay. You actually good. You sort it for the lifespan of the game, or lifespan of the
right.
studio, or whatever. So that's basically that one. And then there was another one where that was the first one that got to me, which was this group, Swedish group, that bought a bunch of studios. They bought like DSX, and they bought like Tomb Raider, and they bought a bunch of different IPs. They
Oh,
spent
was it the company that used to own what is that, Eidos, or how do you say, I don't know, how do you say that, EIDOS, all
Eidos, yeah,
Eidos Interactive,
yeah.
yeah,
They bought
yeah, yeah.
Eidos, yeah, exactly, and they took all the
Okay.
IPs with them. So Tomb
Yes,
Raider was
yes,
one of
yeah.
them.
I love Deus Ex and
DSX was amazing.
Hitman and all that stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. So they bought all that, and they have others as well, like lots of IP that they actually have. And then they basically, I think, because the industry started turning, I think a deal fell through, and then they started selling and closing studios left, right, and center, right,
Damn.
to save money. So because I'm an artist, the part in me that dies a little bit every time this happens is that this is all done because of money. And then us creatives are there just for the passion, for the art, for the craft, trying to do something really nice because we love games. Then all of a sudden we are left with no jobs. And yeah, it sucks when you see especially somebody like that is like lots of experience, that is like super talented. And this guy should 100%, or these girls should 100% have a job anywhere,
Right.
because, oh my God, they are lucky to have him or her. And then you see them just getting dismissed like that. It's yeah, it's heartbreaking, man. It's heartbreaking.
Wow.
Yeah.
Um,
You also think about yourself. Like I think about
I
myself. Like,
was
what does that mean?
okay. Yeah, because you've been in that
Right?
position before.
Yeah. What does that mean? And now I'm consulting to other companies and stuff to
Right.
pay the bills, to all that stuff. And
Right.
consultants, freelancers are normally the first people to go. They
Wow.
rather keep their full-time
Of
staff
course.
than keep like freelancers and contractors. Contractors go first, and then
Right.
we'll see what happens with the full-timers. So yeah, you think about that often. So
Was it the last thing I asked about this before we pivot into talking about Summer Game Fest was that after the situation at Lionhead, how soon or like were you like headhunted after that? Were people like, oh my God, like you're so talented. I can't believe the game didn't come out, but they poached you,
yeah.
or like was it a like okay, back to I got to put out the resumes and hit my network again? Like how long
Yeah.
did it take for you to land with another studio after that?
So I was lucky because I left. I had 3 months before they closed.
Okay.
So
And
I
they
actually
gave
went,
you a heads up. Like,
no, they didn't.
oh,
No,
okay.
they didn't. I just left because I found like a gig that I enjoyed. So I went
Okay,
from
gotcha.
Lionhead to then being the lead cinematic for Horizon before Horizon was a thing. So the first
Okay.
Horizon.
Wow.
Yeah. So like it was a secret project. And then they said, would you like to be a lead? And then they showed me the project and I just saw the storyboards and I'm like, I'm down. Let's
Hell
do
yeah.
it. So yeah, which was a good gig because, just to
Yeah,
add to
that
it.
game was a classic, man.
Yeah,
Like,
and we got to animate like was me. I had a team of 12 people, and we were animating when Aloy goes from being a child to being a woman. The
yes,
first
yeah.
initial thing when she's actually running through the forest and things.
Yeah.
We animated us that whole section like that was
Wow.
right, which was really cool, pivotal moment. So I was happy to do it, and I left. But then I heard the news, and I was like relieved personally, but also like everybody in my head it was amazing. Like till this day, people still meet up in Guildford, not too far from here.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man, to hear that people. So
yeah.
it wasn't just a job, but people were like,
No,
"This
no,
is my
no.
family." And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess in the process of a game dev cycle, because I even see it with our team in just the 16 months or whatever that I've been here with Proxima. And mind you, I'm not even in Europe, right? But
yeah.
I still feel so close with everyone.
That's
And
it.
I've kind of always like. For me, when I work with a company, it's not just about what I'm doing, it's the people who I'm doing it with
Yep.
that are important. So I can imagine in the dev cycle of a game, like you said, 3 to 5 years, you're gonna get tight with people,
Yeah,
and
100%.
shit gets personal. You know what I
Yeah,
mean, to a degree. So
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of cool to hear. That it isn't like, well, this didn't work out, and I know not everyone's like that, but like people
Yeah.
weren't like, well, all right, peace, this was cool, I'm out. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, like the closest thing that I can relate it to, and I've never been to war, by the way, to everybody listening, but
right,
it's very much like going to war with like your squadron, right? You
right,
like, I mean, you have to stay together for a few months, even though it's like only a few months, but you have to stay together and go through it all, like through the ups and downs and the arguments and all these other things. And you
right.
there might be somebody that you don't like, but you have to get along with and stuff. But you do this for 3 to 5 years, right, in order to develop a game. And you have to be with these people and you have to deal with them and you have to work with them. So after 3 to 5 years, especially when you have a successful game and the game makes a massive wave as soon as it releases, it's this feeling of like, we made it. Like you look back and you genuinely go, imagine, Kyle, like, because you are internal, like us kind of like releasing this game over the next year or two and being a massive success after going through all the stuff that we're going through right now. It would
Yeah.
have been, it would feel like a million, even if the game doesn't make any money, it would still feel like $1 million
Oh,
because
it
of
would be a big accomplishment.
amazing accomplishment because it's
Yeah.
so long, right? And it
Yeah.
takes so much effort to make a game that it feels very much like a big thing when you actually do it right. Especially when you get like, certification and a seal of approval from the players that
Right.
this shit is dope. Look at this stuff and all that stuff is really nice. So this is the lens that I look at it when I see all the studios closing, especially the successful ones, because the people are like that. They are like family. Like they don't want to separate, but they are forced to separate
Right.
because for no fault of their own.
I would think about, when you mentioned about when the game comes out and stuff, like for me, I guess I would analogize it to when, as growing up as a person who listened to and still listen to a lot of music, specifically hip hop,
Yep.
and then when my group Panacea when we got signed to a label I grew up listening to in Raucous, and then we put out an album and it got a lot of critical like praise and stuff. It was surreal. Like it was almost like, look, mom, I did it. Even though my mom was probably like, good stuff. Like I don't, like she was happy for me because she knew all these years of this dude being in his bedroom making beats or listening to this music kind of paid off. So yeah, I think for me, I'm almost chasing that high at Proxima when we do Worship Jolly Roger, because I think it's just a matter of time. It's not like if but when,
But when. Yeah, that's how I think about it as well. Yeah. Absolutely. And if we make it, it's going to be our own as well, right? It's
right. And there's something we said about that.
Yeah, it was not handed to us. Like we actually been there all the way, and we're gonna look back at our GDC last year and be like, "Damn, remember when we actually went back? We were broke and asking for money and stuff."
Damn, yeah. Going to GDC, I guess in 2025, it would be cool just to parallel. I hope we're not like, well, hopefully this works out better this time. Like I do think there'll be some progress, obviously. So. And that's part of the fun. It is almost funny. Making a game is almost like being in a video game, because it's like you're leveling up, you're chasing, you're trying to get to the end of it. So it's a lot of gamification in the process of the dev of a game, which is kind of meta.
Yeah, it's very meta. I never thought about it that way, but that's 100% how it is. It's like leveling up, and like this game is hard. This is like Elden Ring. It's like next level. It's like every boss that you face is like you need to actually play it about 100 times.
Yeah, they're like soul crushing. Like one hit, you're done. Like
exactly, just like get out of here. What are you doing? Nobody knows you. Nobody knows you in this world. So it's very much that way.
Oh man, well that's a good segue, because I know there's supposed to be more more DLC, or is it Elden Ring? I don't play Elden Ring. I stopped after a couple hours. Yeah. So, but we can talk about not only Elden Ring, but some of the other like new games that were announced at the recent Summer Game Fest. So I will start with you. Was there any of there were so many.
Oh, so many.
But was there one or a couple that really stood out to you from the trailers that you saw?
Yeah, absolutely. There was the one that I actually was more surprised with, and I have a few friends working on it, which is really cool. Super proud of them. But Perfect Dark, which is like a throwback to like an old school
Nintendo game. Yeah.
Nintendo game, exactly. Yes. That we played, but maybe the listeners.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks really cool. I think they're doing a really good job. They are based off, I think they're in the Bay somewhere. I think the studio, Santa Monica. That's where they were.
Oh yeah. That's not too far from where I am.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah. So yeah, they are doing an amazing job. Those are the ones that actually got me. I think Hyper Light Breaker also is really cool, because Heart Machine does amazing games and they have a really good team. And like I look to those studios now because they keep their team together and they really take care of their teams. So it's really, really cool. And then the other one that I saw as well that brought me a smile was Killer Bean, because like as an animator, Killer Bean was a short that came out years and years and years ago. Look it up on YouTube if you haven't so far. Killer Bean short or Killer Bean animation, and you'll see a series of animations. And this guy is just a passionate dude for animation. One dude, he actually like very much.
So he's a solo dev.
Solo dev, one dude.
Wow.
And he started by making this, like he actually worked on Lord of the Rings in the Matrix as an animator, VFX. And then basically he was like said, like, I don't want to do films anymore. I'm just going to do this thing. And he created this character called Killer Bean, made a bunch of shorts. The shorts were a lot of fun. And this was like early 2000s, like, when the internet.
And here we are in 2024 and that's crazy. That just shows you how
amazing. And he's been developing this for at least 5 to 7 years. Solo, dev, one person. Wow. And the trailer looks amazing. The amount of things that Killer Bean can do, man, it's like he's cool. Wow. Yeah, so that was me, man. I really liked it. So what was the ones that actually you enjoyed the most?
I actually went back I liked. I'm a big fan of like horror games.
Yeah.
So seeing that there's gonna be, I knew there was probably gonna be just because the reboot did so well. But Alan Wake 2
I'll wait. Yeah.
looked really,
Yeah.
and it's funny because I don't even own an Xbox, and ironically, some of my favorites that were shown were like more Xbox exclusive type things.
Yeah.
So Alan Wake 2. South of Midnight, which we talked about yesterday.
Oh yeah, yeah,
We kind of
exactly.
had that looked really cool just because the art style, and I'm just naturally gravitated towards like stories that just like when I saw it, I was like, this is different just because of how many black heroines do you see,
Absolutely.
and not only that, like where it's set, it kind of reminded me of that movie Beasts of the Southern Wild a little bit. Like I don't know if you remember, they came out like
remember. Yeah.
10 plus years ago, but it had a lot of like, it was based in Louisiana, but it had a lot of mysticism and fantastic elements to it,
Right.
as well too. And this kind of looks the same.
That is
There was
really
a game that came out, a Steam game called Caravan Sandwich that looks really cool.
Caravan Sandwich. That's an amazing title.
my daughter, and it looks, I was saying, I won't give away the trailer, but there's some links to that game. To me, when I look at it, especially at the end of the trailer,
Yeah.
I was like, is this like connected to the same universe as that game Journey? Remember that game?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
it is. I think it's a separate studio. Maybe, I don't know, but it reminded me the animation and the look of it stylistically. And then let me see. I wrote a couple. Black Myth Wukong.
I've seen a lot of that, and the animations are
Right.
really impressive.
It looks really cool, and it doesn't
cool.
look too different than a lot of the games out now, as far as like kind of like the action beat 'em up, like the
Yeah, the
Bayonetta
Elden
style,
Ring.
Ninja Gaiden stuff. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Big bosses and stuff.
Another one that I was really surprised with was Phantom Blade Zero, which actually was the same one, like talking about the same kind of style.
Right.
It was kind of like the same, but the animations were really cool. Like, they putting in work.
It's so interesting because now that you said that, like, I guess people know what is hot. Like, it seems like you're seeing so many of these styles of games, but maybe the animation has changed slightly of the protagonist.
Yeah.
But like, how many? I don't know. And it's obviously, when I think about these games, for me, the blueprint of this is like Ninja Gaiden, Devil May Cry. But
Ninja Gaiden back in the day, man.
Oh my God, Ninja.
Hard.
Yeah, it was hard as hell.
Oh my God. And I finished them all. I must
Me
have
too.
had so much time. You too?
Yeah. Team Ninja, man.
It was amazing.
Yeah. But it's just so crazy, like how things go in cycles, because you didn't see a lot of those games for a long time, and then now I'm seeing so many of these games come out, and I'm like, gee, I can't even keep up. I'm like, when someone's like, have you seen this? And I'm like, oh, you mean this? And they're like, no, that's that. But there's another one that looks called this.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even have the time to be able to even play the games I own. So
yeah, exactly. No, it's it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because another thing that I didn't mention here so far is that in order for you, because the market is saturated a little bit, but also it's a way for you to pitch a game, which is not what we're doing at Proxima, because we like to make our life difficult. But it's basically studios basically saying, well, this game is exactly like this other, but the character is different and the story is different, but basically the mechanics are the same and things like that.
Right.
And I'm not saying that all studios do it, but I'm just saying that doing that actually lets you kind of like have an easy in into, well, if Elden Ring was popular and made this much money, then this game, by being similar to Elden Ring, will probably make something similar to in terms of money. So it's much easier for an investor to come in and be like, here's the money. We actually definitely want some.
Because a lot of times the investors don't always, they have to look at the trends, right?
Exactly.
Because that's a lot, especially if they put money into it. They're like, well, let me go with something that's more surefire, as opposed to something more experimental or, So I get it.
Exactly. Like normally they have a catalog as well, and most of the catalog, depending on the investor, right, is very much like invested in stocks, right? You have the investor in stocks that actually is edgy and wants to put all the money on the, I don't know, Nvidia or Tesla because they're hot right now, and if they lose, they can either win or lose all their money. And then you have the safe investor, which is like, a balanced portfolio, and then you have like the ultra safe, which is very much like, I'll only invest on the things that I know you'll make.
Like Apple. Apple, Google. I'm only doing that shit. You know.
The company's been here for a while, and it's the same
Right.
thing with publishers. I feel, at least from the experience that I've seen so far, when they build a catalog of like, this is going to be the games that we want to develop for the next 5 to 10 years, they kind of look at the market and be like, what is popular right now, and then there's always a small window of like, let's experiment with the game. But normally those games, they don't obviously invest as much money because they may lose it all. But yeah, that's basically how it goes. This hence why saying something like it's going to be like Elden Ring, but just different, kind of like it gets you brownie points.
One of the last games that I was gonna mention about that Summer Game Fest that really caught my eye was actually more of a new studio that's been really around. If you think about horror films, you know Blumhouse is kind of like the place. You know, Black Phone, Megan. They produced Get Out with Jordan Peele, and now they have a gaming vertical in their media portfolio, and they had some cool games. One is called Project C, and another one was called Sleep Awake that looked really cool. Cool. Interesting kind of almost like Silent Hill kind of vibes for some of them, but just very unique ways to get scared. So I'm a big fan of like scary. I love my favorite series is not even Resident Evil, but I really like Evil Within, which was insane. But that's a tank.
Silent Hill.
Well, I'm actually excited about Silent. There's another Silent Hill in the world. A remaster, I think, of 2's coming out that I'm going to check out. But Evil Within, man, was just like, I love that series, and I'm so sad. I mean, not to go back to studio closures, but Tango Gameworks was the developer, and when they closed, I was like, well, there's so much for Evil Within 3 because
it's sad, man. It's so sad. It's so sad. Like there goes all the creativity, and even if they actually take the IP and give it to somebody else, it's not going to be the game they
because you could tell like the lead of their studio. He had worked on like Killer 7 for the old Nintendo and stuff. Like he has a very stylized like when certain movie directors, like when they come out with stuff, I'm gonna go see it just because I know I trust them. So it's same thing with games. Like when I see a person in a studio's behind something, I'm more inclined to give it a try, and it sucks now.
Because it's not the same, and because people have expectations as well, right? So, like the latest Fable trailer that came out, it looks really cool, but it's like the latest example, at least in my world, that it's not really the Fable that I was used to.
Right. It's very
It might not be a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it ends up being better. But the immediate reaction is like, is this going to be good? You know what I mean? And I think that most people feel that way, especially when somebody else takes the beloved IP and starts messing with it.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Well, I guess we're working in reverse to how we came in.
Yeah.
Speaking of game announcements, now this game obviously was announced prior to Summer Game Fest, but there's been so much backlash, and we don't have to get into it because I think first off, the game isn't even out. So like, which is just crazy. Like let's talk about if the game is good or bad. And I'm hoping it's good because I'm a big Assassin's Creed fan. I'm actually trying to finish Mirage as we speak, just so I can get caught up and be ready for November when Shadows comes out. But Assassin's Creed Shadows came out. So much backlash because people were going crazy over the Black Samurai, who is one of the two characters you can play. It's either a female shinobi or this Black Samurai Yasuke. I'm just curious, like, we don't have to get too far into it because what's said has been said. But
of course.
Like, what are your thoughts about it? Like, especially as a person who works in the industry, especially as a black man who works in the industry, when you see this kind of shit,
Yeah, man. It's sad. It's so sad. Like, it's really weird. Like, like, I don't know, man. Like, it feels very weird. Like, you ever seen Afro Samurai?
Oh yeah, of course.
Of course, right? So, like, that was another one when it came out. Like, there was not so much like backlash, but there was a little bit, especially from like, I think mostly from the Asian side of things, because it's like, this is not realistic enough.
Then they had Samuel L. Jackson, who's like, but he made that character,
he made it, and he did an amazing job. And then and then we had like Wu-Tang actually put like adding tracks to the
Yeah,
soundtrack
RZA
as
did the
well.
soundtrack. Yeah,
Yeah. RZA actually did it, like it was basically RZA's dream, the whole thing.
yeah,
So
yes,
I feel very much like there is such a thing as like an alternative universe, right? I don't hear people kind of complaining so much when they watch Bridgerton and there's a bunch of like black people that are actually royals and the queen is
right,
black and things
right,
like that. They actually
right,
embrace it. People go
right,
like, yeah, I mean, this is great. I mean, in a perfect world, this is how we would be, right?
right, right,
If we
right,
had a chance.
right.
But when it comes to games, sometimes people are very much black and white, and it's really sad to see. I remember people getting absolutely angry because the cover of Battlefield 5 was a female soldier on the cover.
What?
That's it. That's all it was. It was basically just like a female soldier holding a rifle, and it was like the announcement on Battlefield 5, and that's it.
Wasn't
Right?
I thought you were going to say there was one cover of Battlefield. It was a black soldier on the front with a
On
rifle.
Battlefield 1.
I thought that, yes.
And that was controversial again.
They're
You know
like,
what I
no,
mean?
you all are good for being on the cover of Madden, but you can't be on the cover of, like, you can't be soldiers. That I hate
I know,
that.
man. And it's not like there wouldn't be like black people in these things, right?
Right,
And,
right. Come
and
on.
even if there were none, right? I mean, Tom Cruise was in a movie being
Called
a
The
white
Last
man,
Samurai.
The Last Samurai, and nobody actually said anything bad about it. It was like, oh, actually, he did a good job. What?
The Last Samurai, a white man. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
exactly.
Like,
It, like couldn't be whiter, right? He couldn't be whiter, and he was there, in feudal
and
Japan.
it was a good movie. It was a good movie. I will say
it was-
that. But yeah, I
exactly.
mean, come on.
And I really, really, really hope that this is a great game. I hope it's the best Assassin's Creed of them all.
Me too. I've been waiting
You know what
for
I mean?
this one. I personally have been
Yeah.
waiting for this one because, as someone who's been playing Assassin's Creed since the first one in 2007, all
Yeah.
the Altair to Ezio to whatever,
Yeah.
I've been waiting for them to make either a modernized one, which I
Yeah.
mean, if you play the story, it dips like in and out of like the animus in modern day to obviously revisiting these historical times. But
Yeah.
I've also been waiting for, I was a big fan, one of my other favorite series ever, ironically from Software, who makes now all the Souls games, was Tenchu, if you remember that series.
Oh man, of course.
So
I remember
I've been
that.
waiting for kind of like a proper ninja game. So I was like, dude,
Oh,
whenever
man.
Assassin's Creed makes one, and they did do a 2D one that was like
Yeah.
based in China. It was like a DLC thing.
Yeah.
But I've been waiting for this version of Assassin's Creed for now
Yeah.
17 years at this point.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so it's just the backlash has just marred the whole thing. I mean, not for me because
Yeah.
I'm getting it regardless. I could care
Yeah.
less. But it just sucks. Like, why are we?
I
We're
know,
in
man.
2024, dude. We've had a black president. We live in
Yeah.
a world where diversity should just be. People should champion it because it makes things awesome.
Yeah,
it
it makes things. Yeah, and it's a reflection of the world.
It's a reflection of the friggin' world, man. I don't want to
Exactly,
curse
man.
too much, but yeah, it's just
But
I
it
just
is,
get
like-
passionate about this shit because
Yeah. Yeah, exactly,
anyway.
and it actually made me want to play the game more now.
Yes.
So I like you, when I saw that it was like based in feudal Japan and stuff, I was the same, because to me it was not. For me, it was. Do you remember a game called Onimusha?
Yeah. Oh my god, dude, I love that
Right?
game.
I love
Demon
that game.
Blade, the Demon Blade. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, I played that game so much. PS2, it was the only thing I had at the
Yep.
time. Oh, I had a CRT TV. I had no TV. I had no TV. The only thing I could do is play games, and the two games that I played the most was Onimusha and Tekken all the time.
Wow.
And I finished that game about 20 times, but loved it. And just seeing this one, especially because it has a black character, I'm like, I'm playing this so much, and I haven't played an Assassin's Creed in, I don't know, since the first one. The first one was the first one.
Wow,
that
with
I played.
Altair, that was like
Yeah, Altair.
2007.
Yeah. I kind of like, I tried it a little bit, and I played
Right.
it for like maybe an hour or two, but I never
Right.
finished another Assassin's Creed. But now I'm like, both things are things that I love, and I'm
Right.
like, let's do this, and
Right.
I hope it becomes the best reviewed Assassin's Creed ever.
Me too.
Because I'm kind of afraid if he doesn't, people will probably be like, he wasn't, because he was a black
Like a
character.
Black Sim, yeah.
You know
And
what I mean?
that whatever. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the other thing, let's talk. I want to mention too about Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is known for taking like things that existed in history and just obviously putting a bit of a, I mean, literally before the game boots up, it says, it has a disclaimer talking about like, this game is based on historical whatever made by a multicultural team, you know, basically it's a disclaimer.
Yeah.
So considering this game has done, taken liberties and changed certain things or embellished on stories from people from Leonardo da Vinci to the Borgia family from Italy.
Yeah.
Yasuke, if you look back, he is actual, there's a historical kind of documentation that he existed. It's not like he's a completely fictitious guy.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just crazy. It's not like they just made a black samurai for the sake of making a black samurai.
He did exist at that point.
He did exist.
Actual.
Yeah.
So what are people complaining about?
I don't know, man. I just, kudos to Ubisoft for you know, for taking a chance, because I'm sure they were like, before they pressed the button to release the trailer, they were like, "Here we go, brace for impact." But but good for them.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. Like, I have more respect for Ubisoft than I had before because of this. Because one of the things that actually gave me a lot of respect for DICE, not only it was because they were in Sweden, and in Sweden, one of the things that happens in all the Nordic countries, really, society is very even, as in, like, you know, women, like male, female, women, men, they all have the same rights. Society is built both to work. It's not just one person to work and then the person stay at home and things like that. Same thing with any like black people, Asian people, or whatever. They're treated exactly the same, and it's a beautiful thing. So this is why BF1 had that black dude in the cover. This is why BF5 had the woman in the cover, because, you know, reflects the world. So I like DICE because when we got a lot of feedback, a lot of backlash and stuff from the internet, and it was a lot. It's like, I don't want to buy this game anymore. I don't want to play it. DICE kind of like doubled down and said, good. And like, we don't want
we don't want you to play it anyway. Yeah.
Which kind of caused problems, because then EA had to kind of like come and rescue and things and stuff.
Like, they had to do that damage control. Like, well, hold up, we do want you to play it, but
exactly. Don't go yet.
Yeah, I get it.
But yeah, like I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that. The fact that they just went like, you know, we stand. This is going to be the cover. We're not going to change it because you said so. And I'm kind of hoping Ubisoft doesn't kind of like dilute the game in any ways because of this.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about that, because it's definitely in the midst of our hiatus when that was released last month, like that trailer, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to talk to Harvey about it. And I mean, we have talked offline in our Slacks and stuff about it, but like, you know, it's just, come on, man, this 2024, this is reflective of the world. Like, exactly.
And it's kind of sad that we have to look back in time and say, do you remember when this happened in the backlash? Do you remember when that happened in the backlash? Like, especially to our kids in the future, when you know, when your daughters grow up and my daughters grow up and they are you know, gamers of their own and stuff, it's going to be sad to have to explain these things to them. That you know, things
especially in the year. I'm like, when did that happen? When you were a kid? No, when actually you were a kid. I'm like, what?
It's not like you know, cassettes or
no. This is
not
modern
like
times. We're still having but you know, such is life, man. I mean, there always has to be some kind of adversity to keep you pushing forward and making you want to, like, you know, do right and do better, you know.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's a positive for me in terms of the industry, right? Because this is why diversity counts so much for us here at Proxima as well. You know what I mean?
Sure,
because,
man.
you know, talent comes from everywhere. Like, you know, it's not a shame.
Sometimes it's just giving people opportunity. Like, and I will say that as a person myself who's literally reaping the benefits of just being given an opportunity to showcase a skill, you know.
Absolutely. That's the name of the game, man. That's where the passion comes from. So, yeah, man. It was a good chat. It was a good chat. Like, I love this podcast for everybody listening and watching. This podcast is a really, really good opportunity for us to catch up, but also to kind of like share some thoughts. And definitely, if you're on YouTube, like, drop comments and let us know what you think about all of this stuff that we're talking about. we want to talk to you guys as well, right? It's not
Yes,
just like
indeed.
Kyle and I. It's just like we want to introduce like the community to this chatter, so we can basically take some of those comments and maybe take them to the next podcast and talk about.
I
them
was
as well.
gonna say maybe we should open it up to taking people's questions, whether
Yeah.
they be for you, whether they be for me, whatever. We'll do our
Yeah.
best to answer them about whether it be more towards Proxima or the greater industry kind of outlook. I'd love to open it up and get more of a discourse about that happening. So please, by all means, yes, like Harvey said, comment, share, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and infinite, keep that going on. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Especially questions about the industry or questions about music or whatever it is.
Right.
Let's start that chatter so we can kind of like become a little community on these games, because after all, this is for the players. This is what Kyle-
I was just about to segue into that, but I no need to. I
still
no need
have
to.
to
Look
do.
at you, man. Brother.
I'm learning, man. I'm
Yeah,
learning.
and you did it smoothly. My segues are a little bit some cheesy, but I'm very honest about them. Yours was smooth. That one was really good, man. So kudos to you. We'll leave it at that.
I'm learning. I'm learning. Anyways,
All right, y'all.
It's been
Till
awesome.
next time.
Till
Peace.
next time. See ya.